The Fight for Fairhaven, a tale of grit and justice. The sun hung low over Fairhaven, a tidy gated community on the outskirts of Austin, Texas, casting golden streaks across manicured lawns and brick townhouses. I'd only been here 3 weeks, settling into a sleek, modern townhouse at the edge of the neighborhood. The place was mine deeded, no leases, no landlords, and, most importantly, no HOA breathing down my neck. 2 parking spots came with it, a small porch perfect for my morning coffee, and a garage I'd already turned into a makeshift boxing gym. My name's Jack Carter, a retired welterweight boxing champion turned gym owner, and I'd moved here for a quieter life after years of hustle in East Austin's gritty corners. Fairhaven was peaceful at first. I unpacked boxes, hung a punching bag, and started tending a small garden, something I never thought I'd do. Then I met Susan Reynolds. She was impossible to miss. Short auburn hair shellacked with hairspray, yoga pants that hadn't stretched in years, and the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. She carried herself like she'd been elected mayor of a town nobody asked her to run. I was hauling a new patio table when she sauntered over, inspecting me like I was a stray dog. "You must be Jack, the new guy," she said, her voice sweet but edged, like a knife dipped in honey. "Yup, just moved in," I replied, keeping it friendly but short. "Welcome to Fairhaven," she said, her smile thinning. "We like to keep things neat around here. Organized." "Good to know," I said, nodding and turning back to my boxes. I thought that was the end of it. A nosy neighbor, nothing more. But Susan wasn't the type to let things lie. A few days later, I pulled into my driveway to find her standing there, arms crossed, staring at my pickup truck like it had personally offended her. "You've got 2 parking spots?" she asked, though her tone said she already knew. "They came with the house," I said, stepping out. She glanced at her own driveway, where her oversized SUV sat next to a beat-up sedan. "I was wondering if you'd consider giving one up. You live alone, don't you? You don't need both." I almost laughed, thinking she was joking. "I do need them. I have clients over, friends, business partners. Both spots are mine, Susan." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't flinch. "Oh, Jack," she sighed, like she was scolding a child. "You're new. You'll learn how things work here." That's when it hit me. This wasn't a neighborly chat. This was a power play. "I understand just fine," I said, brushing past her to my door. "It's in the deed." Behind me, I heard her mutter, "We'll see about that." The next morning, her husband, Tom Reynolds, made his appearance. He was a burly guy in camouflage cargo shorts and a faded veteran cap, with the kind of scowl that said he was mad at the world and didn't need a reason. He didn't say a word, just glared as I pulled into my spot. It was a look that promised trouble, the kind I'd seen in the ring before a fight turned ugly. Later that day, I found a note in my mailbox. No letterhead, no signature, just a crookedly printed page claiming the HOA was reviewing parking redistribution. I chuckled and showed it to my lawyer friend, Mike, over beers that night. "This is amateur hour," Mike said, shaking his head. "If she's faking HOA letters, she needs a better printer." But it wasn't just the note. I started noticing things. A dog walker lingering too close to my lawn every evening, trash bags left by my bins that weren't mine, neighbors who used to wave now giving me cautious side glances. Susan wasn't just a busybody. She was building a campaign, testing if I'd crack under pressure. She didn't know who she was dealing with. I'd grown up in Austin's rougher neighborhoods, clawed my way to 2 Golden Gloves titles, and built a gym chain from nothing but sweat and stubbornness. A suburban control freak wasn't going to scare me. But Susan wasn't playing a game, she was writing the script, and I was about to star in her drama. One Monday morning, I stepped outside with my thermos, ready for the gym, and stopped dead. Susan's white SUV was parked smack in the middle of my second spot, like it had claimed the territory overnight. I stood there, sipping coffee, waiting for her to pop out with some excuse. Nothing. Her blinds were shut tight. I called a tow company. 20 minutes later, her SUV was gone. That afternoon, Susan was waiting for me, decked out in a pink tracksuit, filming me with her phone like she was auditioning for a reality show. "You had my car towed," she shrieked. "That's theft." "It's called trespassing," I said, unlocking my door. "Check the deed, page 3. She stormed off, but that night, someone keyed my truck. Deep scratches ran along both doors, and "Get out" was sprayed in red paint across the hood. It was bold, stupid, and so obviously her that I almost laughed. I didn't call the cops yet. Instead, I took photos, filed them away, and installed a full security system cameras on the front, side, back, even one tucked in a birdhouse. A few days later, a note appeared in my screen door. Your behavior is being monitored. Continued aggression will be reported. This is a family community. Typed in Times New Roman, like that made it official. I added it to my growing folder of Susan's antics. Mike, my lawyer, was already joking about turning this into a Netflix series. Then came the fake HOA letter. It was slipped into my mailbox, no postage, claiming my second parking spot was being reassigned to a family in need. Smudged ink, crooked margin sit was pathetic. I scanned it and sent it to Mike, who replied, "Forgery this bad is almost cute." I visited the real HOA office. Turns out, Susan wasn't even a board member, just a loud volunteer who brought cookies and bullied her way into influence. She'd intimidated half the neighborhood, but I wasn't most people. I'd been the underdog before, and I knew how to fight back. The air in Fairhaven grew heavier after Susan's fake HOA letter. I could feel the neighborhood shifting, like a crowd sizing up two fighters circling in the ring. Susan wasn't just testing me anymore, she was swinging, and her punches were getting dirtier. I kept my guard up, sticking to my routine. Coffee on the porch, workouts in the garage, and long days at my gym, Iron Pulse Fitness, where I trained everyone from kids with big dreams to retirees chasing a second wind. But Susan was working the crowd, and I could sense the frost setting in. It started small. Neighbors who used to nod hello now avoided eye contact. The mailman, a chatty guy named Ed, gave me a quick glance like he was afraid I'd drag him into a conspiracy. Even the old couple across the street, who'd waved when I moved in, started closing their blinds when I pulled into my driveway. Susan was spreading her influence, whispering just enough to make people doubt me. I wasn't surprised she had that kind of energy, the type that thrives on control, not truth. What did surprise me was how fast she escalated. One morning, I got a call from the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation. The woman on the line was polite but clipped, reading from a script. "We've received a complaint about Iron Pulse Fitness at your South Austin location. Allegations of unsafe conditions, unregistered fight training, and concerns about the owner's criminal history." Her pause after criminal history hit like a jab to the gut. I felt the old scar of my past Flair UPA bar fight at 19, a glass bottle, a felony assault charge that cost me 2 years in a correctional facility. I'd rebuilt my life since then, turned discipline into a gym empire. But that shadow never fully fades. "Who filed the complaint?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "It's anonymous, sir," she said, but her tone told me she'd heard this story before. I thanked her, hung up, and sat in my truck for a long minute. Nobody in Fairhaven knew about my record except Mike, my lawyer, and a few old friends from my boxing days. Susan had either done some serious digging or gotten lucky with county records. Either way, she'd found my weak spot and was aiming for it. I called Mike and filled him in. "She's playing dirty now," he said. "This isn't just about parking spots. She's trying to hit your livelihood." "Let her try," I said, but my voice was tighter than I wanted. That evening, I found the first flyer taped to the community mailbox. Bold red letters screamed, "Do you know who lives next to you?" Below was a photo from my gym's website team, arms crossed, gloves slung over my shoulder, looking every bit the fighter I was. Underneath, cropped court documents from my old case, with assault and criminal circled in red. A line at the bottom read, "This man trains minors. Should our children be near him?" Signed, Concerned Residents for Community Safety. It was so blatant it was almost cartoonish, but the damage was real. By nightfall, more flyers were everywhere, lamp posts, porches, stuffed in mailboxes like venomous little gifts. My phone started buzzing. Some neighbors called with quiet concern, asking if it was true. Others were fishing, their voices laced with suspicion. A few didn't call at all, just stared when I walked by, like I was a walking hazard. I wanted to rip the flyers down, to march to Susan's door and demand answers. But I'd learned long ago that anger without strategy is just noise. Instead, I gathered every flyer I could find, took photos, and sent them to Mike. "She's crossed into defamation territory," he said. "This is actionable, Jack. Keep collecting evidence." I didn't lose it, but I was close. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the pile of flyers. My past wasn't a secret, but I'd never broadcast it. Why would I? I'd paid my dues, built a life mentoring kids who were one bad choice away from the same mistakes I'd made. Susan wasn't just attacking Mesh, was attacking everything I'd worked for. I opened my laptop and started typing. I'm not big on social media, but this called for a response. I wrote about the bar fight, the 2 years I spent locked up, and how boxing saved me. I talked about Iron Pulse, how I'd built it to give kids a way out, a place to channel their anger into discipline. I didn't name Susan. I didn't need to. I just told the truth and hit post. By morning, the post had over 2,000 shares. Messages poured in: clients, old friends, even strangers who'd been through their own battles. A woman down the street, Linda, left banana bread on my porch with a note: "Don't let the haters win. My boys look up to you." An older guy, Walt, who usually just grunted when we passed, stopped me outside. "Susan's been pulling this crap for years," he muttered. "You're the first one to stand up to her." Not everyone was on my side. One neighbor crossed the street to avoid me. Another stopped mid-wave, like I'd suddenly grown horns. Susan had planted her seeds, and some were taking root. But I wasn't hiding anymore. She'd dug up my past, so I picked up the shovel and started digging back. The real turning point came one Saturday morning. I stepped onto my porch, coffee in hand, feeling the first hint of peace in weeks. Then I saw him, Tom Reynolds, Susan's husband, marching down my driveway like a man on a mission. He was big, broad-shouldered, with a black t-shirt stretched tight and boots that looked like they'd seen better days. His eyes had that cold, empty stare I'd seen in guys spoiling for a fight, not because they're angry, but because they need to feel something. "Morning," I said, setting my coffee down. He didn't answer, just kept coming until we were face to face. I could smell whiskey on his breath, stale from the night before. "You think you're better than us?" he growled. "What?" I kept my voice steady. "My wife says you're spreading lies, making her look like a fool. You proud of that, tough guy?" There it was. Susan had sent her muscle to settle the score. My post had hit a nerve, and she wasn't the type to take it quietly. "She made herself look like a fool," I said. "All I did was tell the truth." "Wrong answer." He shoved me, hard, the kind of push meant to start something. I didn't budge. "Touch me again," I said, my voice like steel, "and you won't walk back to your lawn." He swung a wild, sloppy haymaker, all shoulder and no finesse. I slipped left, his fist cutting through the air like a missed opportunity. My right foot planted, my left hand caught his arm, redirecting his momentum. Then my right hook landed, clean and sharp, cracking against his jaw. The sound echoed off the townhouses like a gunshot. Tom's knees buckled, his eyes wide with shock, and he crumpled into Susan's flower bed, face down in a mess of mulch and petunias. Silence, then chaos. 3 neighbors had their phones out, filming. A guy across the street yelled, "Holy hell," like he'd just seen a knockout on pay-per-view. A woman gasped but kept recording. Then came Susan's scream, high and shrill, as she burst from her house in a bathrobe, looking like a suburban supervillain. "He attacked my husband," she shrieked. "Call the police. He's dangerous." I backed up, hands at my sides. "Check my porch camera first," I said to the growing crowd. Sirens wailed in the distance. When the cops arrived, I handed over my phone, the footage already queued up. Tom's approach, the shove, the swing, and my single punch. The officer watched, lips tight, while Susan ranted about my violent nature. Tom groaned in the bushes, trying and failing to sit up. "You want to press charges?" the officer asked me. "Not yet," I said, "but I want this on record. All of it." Susan was still yelling about restraining orders as I grabbed my coffee and sat on my porch. It tasted better cold. The dust from Tom's ill-fated swing hadn't even settled when Susan doubled down. That night, as I locked up Iron Pulse Fitness after a late session, I noticed something glinting under the streetlights. Shattered glass littered the sidewalk like a trail of jagged teeth. My gut twisted before I even saw the brick lying in the middle of my gym's lobby, surrounded by a halo of broken window shards. Taped to it was a note, scrawled in black marker. "Champions fall too." No signature, just a threat meant to crawl under my skin. I stood there, the cold night air seeping through the gaping hole in the window, my jaw so tight I could feel my molars grinding. This wasn't just vandalism, it was personal, calculated, a declaration of war. Susan had timed it perfectly. After closing, before dawn, when no one would see, but the message would hit hard. I set the brick on the counter, careful not to smudge any prints, and called Mike. "She's escalated," I said, my voice low but steady. "I'm done playing defense. I'll start drafting the suit tonight," Mike replied. "We're talking civil harassment, defamation, property damage, maybe even conspiracy if we can tie her to others. You sure you want to go scorched earth?" "Bury it," I said. The adrenaline faded as I drove home, replaced by a deeper, colder anger. I could picture Susan sipping wine, smirking, thinking she'd rattled me. She thought I'd keep dodging her punches, but she'd miscalculated. I wasn't just a fighter in the ring. I'd learned to fight in courtrooms and county offices, too. And I wasn't alone anymore. That morning, I got a visit from George, a grizzled Vietnam vet who lived 2 doors down. Most folks ignored him, assuming he was just a cranky old man with too many "keep off my lawn" signs. But George had a sharp mind and a long memory. He showed up with a flash drive and a thermos of black coffee, looking like he was delivering classified intel. "I'm sick of her tearing this place apart," he said, handing me the drive. "You want proof? Here it is." The footage was grainy, shot from one of George's weatherproof cameras pointed at Susan's backyard. It showed her pacing like a general, gesturing toward my house while Tom nodded along. Her voice was faint but clear. "You push him. Keep pushing until he breaks. We'll make him look dangerous. He'll leave. They always do." It was a script, rehearsed and malicious. Not just a neighborly spat, but a deliberate plan to ruin me. I sent the video to Mike, who practically cackled over the phone. "This is gold, Jack. She's done." By Monday, Mike filed the civil suit against Susan, Tom, and 3 others. The HOA's treasurer, Ellen, who'd helped spread the fake parking letter, a neighbor, Diane, who'd filed a false code enforcement complaint, and another, Paul, who'd printed the defamatory flyers. 5 defendants, 1 lawsuit, with charges ranging from harassment to defamation to interference with my business. The case hit Fairhaven like a thunderbolt. Local blogs picked it up, then a news channel ran a segment with footage of my gym's shattered window under the headline, "Boxing Champ Sues HOA Bullies in Suburban Showdown." Susan's face was blurred, but everyone knew who it was. My phone buzzed nonstop support from clients, friends, even neighbors who'd stayed quiet before. Linda, the mom with twin boys, texted, "You're doing what we should have done years ago." Walt, the gruff old guy, left a voicemail, "Give him hell, kid." But the best call came 2 days later from a detective with a calm, formal tone. "We've reviewed the footage your neighbor submitted," he said. "Based on that and corroborating statements, we're opening an investigation into conspiracy to commit harassment, property damage, and filing false claims with public agencies." "What about the HOA treasurer?" I asked. "Suspended, pending review," he said. Susan had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. No more flyers, no more whispers behind closed doors. She'd wanted a fight, and now it was in court, in public, with the whole neighborhood watching. I wasn't pulling punches anymore. The weeks leading up to the court date were surreal. Fairhaven felt like a stage, with every glance and conversation charged with tension. Some neighbors started warming up, small gestures, like a nod from the mailman or a wave from the old couple across the street. Others stayed cold, loyal to Susan or just scared of picking a side. I didn't care. I'd been the underdog before, and I was comfortable there. One evening, as I was locking up the gym, I saw a kid lingering outside. A lanky teenager named Ethan, maybe 14, with a shy smile and a backpack slung over one shoulder. He lived a few houses down, and I'd seen him watching my garage workouts from across the street. "You're the boxing guy, right?" he said, shifting on his feet. "That's me," I said, tossing a towel over my shoulder. "Is it true you were, like a pro?" "Welterweight champ, 2-time Golden Gloves," I said. "Now I just train people." His eyes lit up. "Could you train me? Like, not to fight, just to be tougher?" I looked at him, saw the kind of hunger I'd felt at his age, the need to prove something to the world. "Come by the gym tomorrow," I said. "We'll start with footwork." Ethan's mom, Claire, was one of Susan's old allies, part of the porch gossip crew. The next day, she showed up at the gym with him, looking nervous but determined. "I heard about the lawsuit," she said quietly. "I didn't know Susan was like that. I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner." "Don't worry about it," I said. You're here now. That moment stuck with me. Susan's grip on Fairhaven was slipping, and people were starting to choose sides not because of me, but because they were tired of her games. The lawsuit wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone she'd bullied over the years, everyone who'd stayed quiet to avoid her wrath. The night before the court date, I sat on my porch, sipping whiskey and staring at the stars. My truck was parked out front, freshly repainted, gleaming under the streetlights. The neighborhood was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. I thought about my old life, the fights I'd won and lost, the years I'd spent rebuilding. Susan thought she could break me, but she didn't know I'd been broken before. I'd come back stronger every time. The courthouse in downtown Austin buzzed with a restless energy, like a crowd waiting for the main event. Reporters lingered on the steps, neighbors milled about pretending they were just there for jury duty, and the air crackled with anticipation. I walked in wearing a tailored navy suit, my face set like I was stepping into the ring. This wasn't about showmanship, it was about finishing what Susan started. My name's Jack Carter, and I'd come to Fairhaven for peace, but today I was fighting for justice. Susan swept in like she was walking a runway, her pearl earrings glinting under the fluorescent lights, her white blazer crisp, and her heels clacking like warning shots. Tom trailed behind, stuffed into a suit that looked like it belonged to someone else, his unshaven face and bloodshot eyes telling a story of sleepless nights. Their legal team, two polished attorneys and a jumpy paralegal, tried to project confidence, but I could see the cracks. The judge, a silver-haired woman named Margaret Holt with eyes that could cut glass, called the room to order. Her presence alone silenced the whispers. This wasn't an HOA meeting anymore. This was a civil suit with real weight: defamation, harassment, property damage, interference with my business, and the big one, conspiracy. Susan's attorney led off, painting her as a pillar of Fairhaven, a well-meaning volunteer overwhelmed by a volatile new neighbor. He leaned hard on my past, waving my 20-year-old assault charge like a smoking gun. Mr. Carter's history speaks for itself, he said, voice dripping with insinuation. A man with a record of violence has no place disrupting a family community. Mike stood up, calm as a lake before a storm. We don't deny Mr. Carter's past, he began, his voice steady and sharp. In fact, he's never hidden it. What we're here to address is not a youthful mistake from 2 decades ago, but a calculated campaign of psychological and financial violence led by Mrs. Susan Reynolds. Then came the evidence, and it hit like a combination punch. First, the porch camera footage, Tom's aggressive approach, his shove, his wild swing, and my single, precise hook that dropped him. The courtroom murmured as the video played, the crack of the punch echoing through the speakers. Next, George's backyard footage, showing Susan orchestrating the plan to push me until I break. Her own words, clear as day, hung in the air like a confession. Mike didn't stop there. He presented the brick from my gym's window, with forensic analysis linking the tape to a roll found in Susan's garage, same lot number, same brand. The fake HOA letter was debunked by the real HOA president, who testified it was never drafted or approved. The defamatory flyers? A graphologist confirmed they came from Susan's home printer, and a police search uncovered a flash drive with draft versions, complete with her track changes and notes. The final blow was my social media post, which Judge Holt allowed as character evidence. My words filled the courtroom. I don't hide from who I was. I fought my way back and built a life helping others do the same. I won't let someone like Susan Reynolds tear it down over a parking spot. Even the bailiff nodded slightly, and I saw a juror wipe her eyes. Susan cracked during cross-examination. Mike asked, "Who instructed your husband to confront Mr. Carter that morning?" Her mouth opened, then shut, her composure unraveling like a cheap sweater. "He's dangerous," she burst out. "He's a criminal. Look at what he did to Tom." Mike didn't flinch. "And who told Tom to push him?" he pressed. Silence. The kind that screams guilt louder than any outburst. Susan's face flushed, her hands gripping the stand until her knuckles whitened. The verdict came down like a gavel on glass. Susan Reynolds, guilty of defamation, harassment, and malicious interference. Tom Reynolds, guilty of assault and violating his probation. Ellen, the HOA treasurer, was found complicit in distributing falsified documents. Diane and Paul, the neighbors who'd helped with the flyers and false complaints, were guilty of supporting fraudulent statements. I was awarded $110,000 plus court costs. Susan got a 1-year suspended sentence and a restraining order barring her from contacting me or my business. Tom was cuffed right there in the courtroom, sentenced to 2 years in state prison for the assault and probation violation. The metallic click of the handcuffs was the sweetest sound I'd heard in months. Susan collapsed into her chair, her pearl earrings askew, her face a mask of shock. For once, she had no words, no glare, no control. The courtroom cleared slowly, reporters swarming the hallway. I walked past them, no comment, no grandstanding. Mike clapped my shoulder as we reached the exit. "Feels good, doesn't it?" "No," I said, taking a deep breath. "Feels right." The fallout was immediate. Fairhaven buzzed with gossip, but now it was about Susan's defeat. Blogs and news outlets ran the story, some calling it the fall of the HOA queen. My gym saw a surge in new members, drawn by the story of the boxer who fought back. But I wasn't celebrating yet. Susan had lost in court, but people like her don't just vanish. I knew she'd leave a mark, one way or another. 6 months after the courtroom showdown, Fairhaven was a different place. The Reynolds house stood empty, its windows shuttered, the once pristine lawn now a tangle of weeds and regret. A faded for sale sign leaned crookedly at the edge of the driveway, as if it, too, had given up hope. Every time I passed it, I felt no gloating, no bitterness, just a quiet sense of closure. My name's Jack Carter, and I'd come to this neighborhood for a fresh start, not a fight. But sometimes, life throws you into the ring whether you're ready or not. The HOA, once Susan's personal stage, had transformed. New leadership took over, people who valued transparency over intimidation. Meetings were no longer tense, scripted affairs. At the last one, someone brought a smoker full of brisket and a cooler of Shiner Bach-me kind of influence. Neighbors who'd once avoided me now stopped to chat. The old couple across the street, the Hendersons, invited me over for coffee one Sunday, their blinds wide open again. Even Ed, the mailman, was back to his chatty self, cracking jokes about the weather instead of eyeing me like I was trouble. But the real change wasn't in the HOA or the small talk. It was in the Jimmy Gym, Iron Pulse Fitness. Using the $110,000 from the lawsuit, I launched the Iron Ring Youth Program, a free boxing initiative for teenagers. Twice a week, the backroom of my South Austin location filled with 20 sweaty, loud, wide-eyed kids learning jabs, footwork, and, most importantly, discipline. I didn't just teach them how to throw a punch. I taught them how to channel anger, how to set boundaries, how to respect themselves and others. It wasn't just a program, it was a mission, born out of spite for Susan's campaign and pride in what I'd overcome. One of the regulars was Ethan, the lanky 14-year-old who'd first approached me outside the gym. He was still shy, still too polite for his own good, but he was getting tougher not just physically, but in the way he carried himself. His mom, Claire, volunteered at the front desk every Thursday, a far cry from her days in Susan's gossip circle. One evening, after a session, she pulled me aside, a tray of homemade cookies in her hands. "I believed the wrong people," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I'm sorry, Jack. I should have seen through Susan sooner. Now, I'd rather help the right ones." I took a cookie and smiled. "You're here now? That's what counts." Ethan stayed late that night, shadowboxing in the ring while the other kids packed up. "Coach," he said, wiping sweat from his brow, "is it true you knocked out a guy in one punch?" I chuckled. "A very dumb guy, yeah? True story." "Did it hurt?" he asked, his eyes bright with curiosity. "Not me," I said, tossing him a towel. He grinned, darting off to join his friends, their laughter echoing through the gym. That grin stuck with me. As I locked up, I stood in the center of the ring, taking it all in. Punching bags swayed gently, gloves thumped in the distance, and the air buzzed with life. On the far wall, under a spotlight, hung the flyer Susan had plastered around Fairhaven, now framed like a trophy. Next to it was a plaque I'd had engraved: respect, boundaries, strength. Without them, you're just a bully with a loud voice. Victory doesn't always look like a belt or a headline. Sometimes it's a kid like Ethan learning to throw a clean jab instead of a tantrum. Sometimes it's a neighborhood shaking off its fear of a petty tyrant. Sometimes it's standing in a gym you built from nothing, knowing you turned a fight into a legacy. The Reynolds campaign had backfired in every way. Susan's reputation was in tatters, her allies scattered or shamed. Tom was serving his sentence, and the other defendants, Ellen, Diane, and Paul, had faded into the background, their roles in the scheme exposed. Fairhaven wasn't perfect, but it was healing. People waved again, doors stayed open, and the community felt like a community, not a battlefield. One evening, as I sat on my porch with a whiskey, Linda, the mom with the twin boys, stopped by. "You know," she said, leaning against the railing, "you didn't just win for yourself. You showed us we don't have to live under someone like Susan. My boys talk about you like you're a superhero." "I'm no hero," I said, sipping my drink. "Just a guy who doesn't back down." She smiled. "That's enough." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting Fairhaven in a warm glow, I thought about my old life, the bar fight, the cell block, the years of clawing my way back. Susan had tried to use that past to bury me, but she'd only given me a platform to stand taller. I'd fought for my place here, not just in court, but in the hearts of people like Ethan, Claire, Linda, and even old George. That was the real win. The Iron Ring Youth Program grew, drawing kids from all over Austin. I hired 2 new coaches to keep up, both former boxers who'd walked paths like mine. The gym became a hub, not just for training, but for conversations about choices, second chances, and standing up to bullies, whether they're in a ring or a neighborhood. Every time I saw a kid like Ethan land a solid jab or walk out with a little more confidence, I knew Susan's loss was their gain. Fairhaven had changed, and so had I. I'd come here for peace, but I'd found purpose. The Reynolds house might stay empty, its garden might rot, but my corner of the world was alive, thriving, and stronger than ever. Sometimes, the best way to win a fight is to build something better than what your opponent tried to destroy. This story is about more than a parking spot or a courtroom. It's about standing up to injustice, facing down bullies, and turning pain into purpose. How do you feel about Jack's decision to fight back, both physically and legally? Was his one-punch response to Tom justified, or should he have walked away? What would you do if you faced a bully like Susan in your own life? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get the conversation going. I'd love to hear your take on violence, justice, and rebuilding after a fight.